Yes.
Yes.
So the next presenter is Ji Liu, who is a pianist and composer, pursued first a master's degree in music at the Royal Academy of Music, and then received a PhD in music from King's College London. Professional activities consist of constant movements between performing, composing, and researching. His research interests expand from 19th century performance practice, particularly in Schubert's music, to creative performance practice. He's also a composer, and you can read the rest there. He's regularly performed at many UK and international venues and festivals, including Carnegie Hall, Royal Albert Hall, and Royal Festival Hall. So this morning, Ji Liu is going to be presenting workshop proposal, Creative Programming with Schubert's Unfinished Piano Sonatas. Let's welcome Ji Liu.
Hello everyone, my name is Ji Liu. I'm a pianist and a composer, and it's my great pleasure to share my research in creative programming with Schubert's Unfinished Piano Sonatas with all of you today. In today's presentation, I will discuss possibilities, methods, and artistic strategies for presenting and programming one of Schubert's unfinished piano sonatas, which is generally less performable in the actual performance culture of classical music due to its incomplete form. My approach will be based on programming it with 3 contemporary works by Rzewski, Feldman, and myself, and analyzing several shared musical attributes of these pieces, such as tempo choice, structure, dynamic, and tension. These connections will show how Schubert's fragmentary work could be performed effectively within a creative program, and how programming strategy can help the performer make specific and coherent interpretation of decisions on certain pieces based on those shared musical features in a unified program. Before getting into the detailed discussions about these findings, I will introduce you to the background and the genesis of my research interest in creative programming with Schubert's unfinished works. The whole idea began when I attempted to program one of Schubert's unfinished piano sonatas in a public concert quite a few years ago. Because it was unusual to program any fragmented or incomplete work in a mainstream concert. So the program director politely declined my proposal and asked for an alternative program. While it was understandable due to the well-established program practices in modern concerts, this experience stimulated me to think about the complicated relationships between the program and the performer. Then I started to think about the following questions. Why is program so important in performance culture? How can innovative programming practices help musicians persuade industry professionals to present less performance-capable works on modern concert stages and revive and reimagine 19th century performance and programming practices within and beyond conventional concert platforms? Since then, I have been working on this research inquiries and their related issues through my artistic research and ongoing concert engagements. I have developed possible solutions to programming and performing Schubert's unfinished works in their original, incomplete forms that are generally thought of as impractical to program or to perform. Without further ado, let's move on to the discussion of today's concert program. And the music program that I'm going to share today consists of the following 4 works shown here. First, when discussing programming and performing Schubert's unfinished works, whether every unfinished sonata would need a faithful completion together performed has always been questioned and discussed by performers and scholars. For example, pianist Andreas Schiff has expressed his explicit aesthetic opinion on these fragments and their completions. So he said, there have been various attempts by a number of musicians to finish the fragments. Some of these are better than the others. It is a matter of taste if one decides to play them or not. It is certainly takes courage, or is it arrogance to touch the works of such genius? But is our intervention really necessary? Is it not much more mysterious to see how Schubert struggled with the form in his youth than to find the solution of the recapitulation? Is there anything more to be said after the Andante of the 840 or that of the B minor unfinished symphony? Sketches and fragments. In the visual arts, nobody would dare to add to Michelangelo's unfinished Prisoner or Pieta. In music, people just can't leave them alone. They should. Of course, there is a significant difference between repairing an unfinished artwork and an unfinished piece of music. Because in art, to complete a fragment changes the original forever, whereas in music, it leaves it entirely untouched. However, Schiff's words in some ways reflect the current debates, challenges, and an almost utopian approach to programming and performing such unfinished works in modern concert scenes. While decent pastiche completions may well solve the practical issues of performing these fragments in public concerts, my own preference in programming these unfinished works is to keep their musical form as original as possible. Although there are good cases for performing convincing completions in concerts, I would like to challenge and examine those fragments with more complicated issues in completing them, as they will give more open and imaginative possibilities for creative programming. Not because I'm a purist who is against performing any pastiche completions, but my choice in keeping these fragments original is to take advantage of programming and investigate how far the performer can go when concertizing and programming unfinished works. As a performer, when I deliberately program Schubert's unfinished works in the context of contemporary pieces in a program like this, several methods in the interpretation effectively change the way this piece sounds and the way they reflect and connect with each other. So, three germane elements come together through my approaches to my discussed case today, and making the interpretational strategies coherently connected and unified. So these three elements are tempo and pace, physicality as expressivity in performance, improvisation. They forge tangible gateways for investigating my research inquiries, while each can be considered independently. Considering them as entwined resources will foster new performance practices which reimagine the 19th century program practices in which performers could program short movements and intersect improvisations between pieces. Now I'm going to examine each of them separately by comparing and illustrating some shared musical features in these pieces. Then these three elements just mentioned will contribute to my final theoretical and musical decisions for making an improvisational episode, connecting the abrupt ending in Schubert's unfinished sonata and Rzewski's Winnsboro Cotton Mill Blues. The choice of tempo and pace is one of the essences of unifying these contrasted pieces in this particular program. As the whole program is inspired and centered on Schubert's unfinished sonata and its character as the whole program develops. So finding the inner rationale of tempo and pace throughout these pieces can help to amplify one of Schubert's unique musical characteristics, as Brenda said, being a sleepwalker. Also, the awareness of tempo and pace is crucial in enabling Schubert's work to offer responses to other composers' work in this program. As the tempo choice is decided by the rhythmic features, so I would like to start by comparing these four pieces' similar perpetual rhythmic features in this program. And sometimes you will see later that although these rhythmic features are quite non-stop, there will also be small segments of interruptions and silences between phrases, but all these segments will be connected by the underlying perpetual rhythmic features. So looking at Schubert's score, from 36 to the end of this movement, we see how the piece is filled with quavers without interruption. This extraordinary feature of this movement is a fine example of how Schubert deliberately created a sense of water, traveling, continuity, endurance, and wondering. So I will play you a little bit, just at the beginning of the piece, so that we can get into this very unique feature of a sonata movement. So, as we can hear, the perpetual and circulated shape of phrasing, both small elements and longer phrases, are throughout the piece. And this feature is both applied in the melodic line and the accompaniment line. And this circulated shape of phrasing also reflects the arabesque style. And here in Schubert's sonata movement, the continuously evolving melodic line grows naturally rather than being stopped by the rhythmic changes. So as we hear, the melodic line is quite breathless and longing. But it was supported by the accompaniment part, which was developed in the development section. So as we can hear this and they are always supported by the non-stop perpetual rhythmic features. So it will be something like this. So the arabesque style can also be heard in Rzewski's Winnsboro Cotton Mill Blues and Feldman's Palais de Mari in this program. And for example, as we can see here, in Feldman's score, the arabesque figure was in a slowed down and stretched manner. However, it is still audible. Etc. So there's always a circulated pattern in this piece as well. And similar figures, but in different forms, also appear with a boogie-woogie character in the left hand of Rzewski's piece, whereas the right hand is quoting the beginning of Rachmaninoff's second piano concerto. So we can hear this circulated and perpetual rhythm. Something like this, and it goes on. So this perpetual momentum rhythmic pattern can be found throughout the first part of Rzewski's Winnsboro Cotton Mill Blues, as we can see from this score. So the 4 semi-quaver group rhythmic patterns is maintained through the first 7 pages, which constitute the first part of the whole piece. And above this perpetual rhythmic pulse and the sound landscape played by the 2 hands, there is also the developing an enlarging melodic line reminding the arabesque pattern. And I will play you this little passage here. So as we can hear this melody. So this circulated and hesitated and even like the breathless motif is played and supported by the momentum sonic landscape played by the 2 hands or the palms, and this is played by the elbow. So it's sounds like this. As we can hear, this actually reminds us about the what I said about Schubert, that the melodic line, the breathlit melodic line, was supported by the perpetual rhythmic features in the accompaniment part, in the development section. And then these perpetual arabesque figurations can also be found in my own composition, Etude for Solo Piano. And I will play you a little bit. Features and the shaping of the phrase in all these pieces are the very first feature appealing to my attention, that unifying these four pieces in one program. But other features in these three contemporary pieces also echo Schubert's, and thanks to the dissolving nature of the ending of Schubert's piece, the link between these Schubert's ending bars and Rzewski's opening passages is quite smooth and organic. Indeed, as we carefully read the last four bars of Schubert's sonata, the bass line alters between the note of G and F sharp, as it is the end of the development section, although the music itself provides a sense of going back home to the subdominant key of B minor. The nature of wandering and moving in this piece always make the music sound unsettled. So this piece is ended in this arriving yet searching atmosphere. So I will play you the last few bars of this piece. And then, please take a close look at the beginning bars of Rzewski's piece. While the bass line in Schubert's ending bars are G and F sharp, Rzewski's piece opens with two alternating bass notes, G flat and F. So, a half step down that's gradually evolved into hand and forearm clusters, leading to a massive sonic wall representing the loud cotton mill machinery. By keeping the dynamic at a super soft level in the very beginning of Rzewski's piece, it is possible to achieve a highly insecure atmosphere similar to the ending of Schubert's piece. And so also this kind of anticipation of discomfort in Rzewski's work seems to become the continuity of Schubert's searching and unsettled music. Now going back to the tempo and the pace element that I mentioned earlier. So looking at the tempo mark of Rzewski's work, the composer himself deliberately put 88 to 92 per crotchet. Although Schubert did not put down any tempo indications, but allegro moderato, it is wise to choose the same tempo and pace between these two works, since they are supposed to play together and have some inner connections. And subjectively, I feel these pieces should move forward, and there is always a sense of traveling and aiming for certain directions, So I deliberately do choose the faster tempo at 92 per crochet in Rzewski's piece, and then 92 per minimum towards the ending passages of the development section of Schubert's piece. So this way, two pieces share the same musical pulse, and thus the musical idea and structure are more united. So let me illustrate how these interpretational ideas might work in my playing by performing the last few bars of the Schubert and then connecting to Rzewski's piece. Yes. So as we can hear, the atmosphere, the mysterious atmosphere after the Schubert and the beginning of Rzewski actually worked quite well in this set of interpretational strategies. So now let's move to the second feature, physicality as expressivity in performance. Looking at the first half of Rzewski's piece, it is a process of building up both sonic progression and physical endurance. In Catherine Wooder's paper, The Pianist Body at Work, Mediating Sound and Meaning, in Frederick Rzewski's Winnsboro Cotton Mill Blues, she wrote something interesting words regarding depicting forced labor on the keyboard, and we can see this quotes in the screen. So when many composers, when they use music to depict pain or stress at the keyboard, they add more diminished chords to the staves. But what makes Catherine Wooder's point here interesting is that Rzewski not only applied the harshness of expression to the music we heard, but also applied it to the physical effort and the visual image that the performer inevitably delivered to the audience. Looking back to Schubert's piano sonata, similar physical effort that helps to express musical tension was also employed here. Although it is questionable whether Schubert did it intentionally, it does help the performer understand and achieve stronger musical communications. Moreover, the physical difficulties set by the composer also give the audience the visual pleasure of seeing such a performance. So looking at the development section of Schubert's sonata here, while the right hand is playing the accompaniment quavers, the left hand is playing two voices. One is in the bass voice and one in the soprano voice. And this sounds something like this. So therefore, in order to achieve a seamless connection between the bass and the top line, the left hand has to cross the right arm and travel in between quickly. smoothly and adequately does need a lot of practice, and the actual left arm position on the top is not as comfortable as it looks either. But the sound effort produced by it is satisfactory, and the gesture of the lips already brings a sense of expressivity in the music. So the more tension sonorities the phrase speaks within the music, the bigger lips it creates. So almost 150 years before Rzewski's work was written, Schubert has already applied such physical representations to his musical writing. Similar applications has also been used in the development section of my own composition, the Etude for Solo Piano, and we can see here. So, for example, in the fortissimo passage, so it sounds like this. So the big stretch of the hand is quite large. However, they make the natural expressivity of the music through these physical difficulties. Although such physical challenges in modern Feldman's work might not appear to be as explicit as other three pieces just mentioned, the ultra-soft dynamics required throughout Feldman's work and the interval leaps within this intimate sonic range also need rather intense physical control in order to deliver the coherency and consistency in character which the work requires. So here this passage. Yes, something like this. So it still needs a lot of physical strength to control the softness and create a sense of intensity and continuity. So such physical inputs used in all these pieces have brought a sense of shared intensity and expressivity in this program. Now let's move on to the third element that come together through my programming approaches, improvisation. Through my artistic research in presenting Schubert's unfinished works, I'm interested in exploring improvisatory episodes between these losing sessions. In reality, it may still prove to be rather a radical action for reviving improvisation tradition with compositions written in the 19th century. However, by embedding improvisations in Schubert's unfinished piano sonatas, may provide more feasible and viable solutions to relive such historical performance practices with improvisation in concerts. Because those fragments are unfinished, so as soon as the piece ends, there should be no restrictions for the performer to break. So I have taken my creativity in programming and performance with Schubert's unfinished piano sonatas one step further by implementing an improvisatory episode between Schubert's unfinished work and Rzewski's Winnsboro Cotton Mill Blues as a way to examine whether such a model may help the performer program and concertize unfinished works. While conducting such improvisations between a concertized performance, often combines the shared musical attributes just mentioned and analyzed with some random factors that may be raised, realized, perceived, and inspired through spontaneous interpretations during the performance. For example, one of the alternative interpretations I might think of in this program is the dark nature emanating from its ambiguous unexpectancy. For example, the last few bars of Schubert's exposition may sound quite beautiful like this. Unexpected harmonic progressions. Are often treated as beautifully decorated arabesques. However, if we put Schubert's piece in the context of Rzewski's depiction of the hardship of factory labor, inspired by this poem, then this kind of transformation may be interpreted as some uncertain traveling towards inner and outer pain in Schubert's music, in which the composer twists between bitterness and sweetness. Then this unsettled longing and searching ending of Schubert's unfinished work is where the improvisation starts. And a possible improvisation that links between Schubert's work and Rzewski's work based on all the shared musical elements I have tested and mentioned and analyzed throughout my presentation include perpetual rhythmic features, physical inputs, unexpected harmonic progressions, ambiguous unexpectancies, intensities, etc. within this program could sound something like this. So because due to the time, so I won't improvise for 5 minutes or something, but maybe for 2 minutes or something, so the improvisation could similar sound like this. programming and performing Schubert's unfinished works with improvisations, one might have already connected this scenario to traditional practice that was indeed popular in the 19th century. Due to the relative strict performance practice and stereotypes in the modern concert sectors, performers still need enough courage to have total freedom in improvising and weaving their ways into pieces they wish to perform. While people are still treating the actual text as the only resource and guidance to access the most authentic interpretation of Schubert's music, I would personally hope that one day one could also look for new and informed interpretational ideas, taking consideration of program strategy as a tool beyond the text, and revive performance practices in the way that this music was programmed and performed when it was written. To recap, the practical issues regarding programming unfinished works in mainstream concert scenarios I mentioned at the beginning of my research, of my presentation, although it may still need some tailored discussions with artist managers, program directors, and concert promoters before undertaking such artistic decision within concerts. And it may also need to be carried out by making some written or verbal introductions for the audience before the performance. It is possible to engage, respond, and practice these research outcomes in the actual performance culture of classical music these days, particularly due to the new normal that we have to live in since 2020 with all the new emerging performance formats. So creative programming can be expanded and experimented beyond limitation of concert halls and even the conventional expectations of a music performance in terms of format. As this journey grows, it is rewarding to see how some of the advanced and radical approaches towards programming strategies preceded in the academic field can also be implemented and accepted in the wider performance cultures these days. Through researching programming strategies with both unusual and mainstream repertoires and unifying them as one larger musical unit, I also learned the lesson of how programming can help me expand my creative role as a performer and to develop performance that incorporates my artistic vision, taking into account the specifics of each program to create a complete performance. The idea of creative programming is about creating freedom in music making. There are rules and principles to obey, but in the end, it is the creativity and imagination that really make magical moments happen. And that brings my presentation to an end, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. I found it very brave, very fascinating, and full of insights into how musical programming can become more diverse. And I really enjoyed the structures that you talked about. So congratulations. I just open up to questions in the room first. I've got a couple of things to ask. Anyone here or on Zoom have questions? No? Well, I might just kick off. Obviously, you're graced with being a very good performer, but also a composer, and I think that makes a huge difference to what you can do in this space. I'm not a composer myself, but I'm interested to know, when you were improvising from the end of the Schubert into your own composition. I think it was yours, wasn't it? Oh, you were doing your improvisation into the other work.
Yes.
Do you? Is some of I loved one of the modulations that happened. It was a sudden one. Is that something that you have in your head? Is it something that you've practiced? You've got some structures that you already have, or is that coming to you in the moment?
Oh, well, yeah, for that particular improvisation that actually I did it spontaneously. But because I've played quite a lot of Schubert's works, so I think my fingers and my mind is kind of getting used to his idiomatic musical language. So when I get away from his work, and it's something that the modulation coming up to my mind spontaneously. And every time I did like random like modulations in my improvisation, but I think that might fit to Schubert's special musical language. And that also gives my own inspirations of how I connect his music with contemporary composers' work, and also to my own performance practices. Yeah.
Thank you, that's great. I wondered also who else is working like this in programming. Have you been in contact with other people? Are there others who serve as a model for the sort of thing that you're doing?
Oh yes, actually, the Frederick Rzewski himself. I mean, he's a pianist and a composer and a very deep thinker. And actually, some of his performance practices involving with the improvisations is something that I always take a model. Yeah, and also actually, but he did something even more radical. Like he will do improvisations between Beethoven's Appassionata sonata or Hammerklavier. And from his interviews, he always say that what challenge he might encounter during such artistic experiments. But I think for me, I think that's a wonderful thing to do. But I think I'm less courageous than Rzewski to do things like Beethoven, because I still need to consider like my professional career and how I deal with artist managers, etc. And I keep they keep warning me. So it's better to do something within Schubert's unfinished sonata. And as I said in the presentation, that after the piece was ended, there's no restrictions for us to break. So it was a nice tool for me actually to try to reimagine in 19th century performance practice, like improvisations in my performance practice. I think it's a compromise, but at the same time, it's something adventure for me to do. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, while you talk about Beethoven, I might, if we've got, have we got a minute or so left? Last night we had this wonderful presentation, which was around George. I don't know if you watched it, but Bridge Tower, who was the violinist who played
Yes.
In the first performance of the Kreutzer. And I know the story about that, which is that, it's something like this. It's a bit mythical, but that on the night before that concert, Bridge Tower asked to see the music because he hadn't seen it yet. And Beethoven's response was, well, I haven't written it all out. And when he turned up to wherever the castle was the next morning, he had to read over Beethoven's shoulder. And the violin part was kind of sketched out, but there was not much of the piano part there, apparently. And it just makes me, you bring up this point about, well, I could do it with Schubert's unfinished or fragment, but when it comes to Beethoven, I feel, worried. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because in the day, if you're thinking about sort of historical practice, most of all of these things were probably improvised anyway. And even when things were written down fully, did they even play what was there? This is the thing that I'm pondering. I wonder what you think about that, and whether that kind of notion might make you more brave about tackling what you're doing, but with Beethoven.
Oh, well, yes. I think in the future, I might, in the program note, I will warn the audience, give them a bit of a historical context. Yeah, but actually, at one time, I mean, I played the Beethoven fourth piano concerto, and that's one time that in the very beginning, like, we should roll the first chord, or should we not roll the first chord? I mean, yeah, it was like my Royal Festival debut at the time, and I wasn't very sure whether I could do some improvisations for that. But in the end, on the minute I went to the stage, I decided to roll the chords. So it was a last minute. It's more like improvisation, but I think as a performer myself, I still have the kind of like the mental censorship within myself or something like, yeah, but I think, yeah, thank you for your, yeah, for your suggestion, maybe in the future, yeah.
It's just a
Yeah.
thought because Beethoven, remains the holy grail. We can't touch it, but
Course.
obviously that was
Yeah.
not the way it was. Maybe you could have, did you roll the chord up and down a couple of times or just in one direction? That's a joke.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, they're all my questions. Does anyone else have a question to ask? Well, in that case, thank you so much for this great presentation. We're going to go to morning tea now, but we'll see you all back here at 11:30 for the next session. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.